Welcome to By Seat and By Saddle, seeing North America by car and by motorcycle. This is part 2 of a 4-part travel diary we made of a trip to South Dakota, Wyoming, and Montana in September and October of 2011. In part 1, we described who we are, how we travel, and the route we followed. We also described the first part of our trip. At the end of part 1, we were still in the Black Hills of South Dakota and had just completed our visit to Mount Rushmore. Just to review our route, we started in Port Huron, Michigan, and traveled south into Indiana, then west across Illinois, Iowa, and finally into South Dakota. We then continued west and explored Wyoming and even a bit of Montana. Our route home was further south and took us across Nebraska. A list of what we saw and did on each of the 4 parts of this trip was shown in part 1 and is shown here again as a refresher. It can help you pick and choose what might interest you. So come on and continue this trip with us. We will again take you along with words and photographs. It's always a pleasure to share them with you. Remember, you can stop the video at any time for a closer look at any photograph. At the southern tip of the Black Hills lies the town of Hot Springs and a most incredible paleontological discovery called the Mammoth site. It is a prehistoric sinkhole about 120 feet by 150 feet that existed about 140,000 years ago. It contains the skeletons of scores of mammoths. Warm water and grass in the sinkhole lured the mammoths down. However, the sides were too steep to climb out, and so they were trapped and died. Mammoths were an elephant-like species that went extinct about 12,000 years ago. Of the 61 remains recovered from the sinkhole by 2016, 58 were North American Columbians and 3 were woolly mammoths. Fully grown Columbians are almost 20% bigger than African elephants, which are the biggest elephants alive today. A museum building was constructed over the sinkhole and scientific excavation of the site began. It is still an active site, and so further excavation and research are still going on. The photos show the excavation site as it was when we visited it in 2011. In the period between about 12,000 and 24,000 years ago, humans in Russia and Eastern Europe used mammoth bones to build dwellings. On another day, we set off again on our motorcycle. For riders on a motorcycle, an animal beside the road, even a little one, is a huge danger. With so many animals in the Black Hills, especially free-range cattle, we had to proceed carefully, eyes always scanning the shoulders of the road, one hand resting on the front brake lever and the right foot on the rear brake pedal. This cow was a good example. She wanted to cross the road and wondered if she could get across ahead of us. Since she weighed more than the 2 of us in the motorcycle combined, her decision was really important to us. She won. We stopped and waited. We passed lots of other animals along the road too. There were mule deer, pronghorn antelope, groundhogs, and lots of buffalo. On our little motorcycle, the buffalo looked even bigger than they really are, which is certainly big enough. To us, they were terrifying. With only 250 cc's and riding double, I'm not sure we could have outrun one, at least not in the crucial first 100 yards. Luckily, we seemed less interesting to them than eating. There were other things to see too, like this antique General Motors truck, an old McCormick Deering grain thresher, and an Owens Bureau wooden farm wagon. We rode over to Custer State Park again with a plan to return early the next day for the annual Buffalo Roundup. It's a huge event that draws tens of thousands of people. We were told it would include the governor of South Dakota. The next day, we arrived early and found out we were far from being the first ones there. However, on the vastness of the plains, there was unlimited room for everybody. We weren't the last ones to arrive either. An endless parade of vehicles, extending as far as the eye could see, continued snaking in as we sat waiting on one of the hillsides. When everyone coming to the roundup had collected on the hills overlooking the plain, word arrived that the buffalo were just over the horizon. An electric sense of anticipation ran through the crowd. And then they came. They are barely visible on the crest of the hill near the right of the photo. Now the herd is clearly visible, like a colony of ants crawling towards us. One of the cowboys had ridden by us earlier toward the herd, but had apparently been outsmarted by his horse. The horse came back alone, apparently not interested in herding buffalo. We wondered how the herding was going for the cowboy on foot. Now they were descending the final hills. Soon they were almost in front of us, and close enough to see the herders as well as the herd. The thousands of pounding hooves created a dust cloud above the herd as it ran towards us. We wondered a little about the authenticity of the cowboys driving the buffalo. A lot of them weren't riding horses. They were driving four-wheel drive pickups. The herd arrived, with everybody busy snapping pictures. As the herds passed, every eye, almost, was locked on the scene in front of them. The cowboys on the sides kept the herd from spreading, and the cowboys in the pickups behind kept the herd moving. With the buffalo now in front of us, the herders backed off, and the herd immediately relaxed. We walked to an adjacent hill about 5 minutes away to take a few pictures from a different perspective. This photo shows the start of corralling, which is needed to get the herd behind fences. Note how the fencing controls the flow of the buffalo. The picture also happens to show some of the other crowds and vehicles at the Roundup. It's really quite an event. The gate near us brought some of the herd much closer and gave us a good look at these great animals. We had a great time at the Roundup and had our picture taken several times by our newfound motorcycle riding friends Kim and Vern from North Dakota. So, we have reached the end of Part 2. Part 3 describes our passage through the Bighorn Mountains and the scenery on the way to Yellowstone National Park. Yellowstone is a truly unique and magnificent destination, with free-roaming buffalo, geysers blasting columns of steam and boiling water, and bubbling, beautifully colored pools. We are concluding this part of our trip diary with just a small video segment of the Buffalo Roundup, because it really conveys the sights, sounds, and excitement of the adventure.